used to be the deadliest assassin on Earth, but right in the middle of a mission, I was violently dragged into another world. To force me to take out the Demon King, those mages actually used some lost secret art to plant a binding curse inside me. They even promised to send me back to Earth once the job was done. Left with absolutely no choice, I gripped my weapon, reduced to nothing more than a hunting dog for those bastards. Doing whatever they ordered, after 10 long years of bloody, brutal fighting, I finally slaughtered the Demon King with my own hands. But those hypocrites instantly turned their backs on ordeal. Not only did they refuse to send me home, they pushed it even further. They ordered me to wipe out the Holy Knight, Baldur, for a dog on a leash like me. Saying no wasn't an option. But right after I gave it everything I had and finally took Baldur down. As he lay there dying, a creeping smirk crossed his face. Don't get too cocky, you'll be tossed aside soon enough. The moment those words left his mouth, ruthless magic wires violently wrapped around my throat. The Empire's Grand General had silently slipped up right behind me. The very next second, a sharp blade blasted straight through my chest. It was only then that it hit me. I was just a useless mutt, meant to be thrown away the moment I outlived my use. In a sheer panic, I swallowed a blue crystal stone. And just like that, I died, choking on my own humiliation and absolute rage. But when I opened my eyes again, I had actually been reborn into a baby's body. I was lying right in the arms of a gorgeous blonde woman. I glanced up at the man standing behind her. He felt strangely familiar. Then, it clicked. It was none other than the strongest necromancer and dark mage on the entire continent, the Black Duke, Saxon. Which means this had to be the top of the legendary dark magic tower. Looks like that reincarnation stone I swallowed right before dying actually worked. I was really reborn with all my memories intact. But in this life, I refuse to be anyone's hunting dog. I am now the eldest son of Duke Saxon. I've become one of the highest-ranking nobles in this entire empire. I made a silent vow to myself the moment I grow up and master the art of necromancy. I am going to make those bastards from the Empire pay in blood. Just then, my mother spoke up, looking deeply confused. He was just born, so why isn't he crying? Hearing this, my father's brows furrowed. If a baby doesn't cry, isn't that a terrible omen? The wet nurse rushed over instantly and scooped me up into her arms. She checked my perfectly steady breathing, and with a fiercely determined look, declared she knew exactly what to do. She raised her hand and slapped me right on the butt. The stinging pain instantly made my face burn bright red. Seeing that I still wasn't crying, the wet nurse figured she probably just didn't hit me hard enough. Without a second thought, she raised her ruthless hand again and gave me several massive, back-to-back smacks. When I absolutely refused to cry, my mother reached out and gently took me back. But then she raised her hand, too. I squeezed my eyes shut in utter despair. But a second later the hit never came. Instead, her hand gently brushed over my body. It was so incredibly tender, so wonderfully warm. Me? A hardcore, battle-hardened killer in my past life? When had I ever felt this kind of pure, loving warmth? I was instantly so overwhelmed with emotion that I just burst into tears. And from that day on, I had a brand new name, Dale. In the blink of an eye, 8 whole years passed. Late one night, my mother was chatting with my father right before bed, mentioning how completely obsessed I was with magic. He practically lives in the study every single day. She sounded pretty worried, and gave my father a very specific warning. You haven't forgotten the promise you made me, right? You swore you would never teach Dale any necromancy. My father nodded, but before he could even reply, a maid came sprinting down the hall in an absolute panic. This is terrible. Something's happened to the young master. Their hearts practically stopped, and they sprinted straight to my room. Only to find me completely trapped right in the dead center of my own magic circle. Wild, uncontrolled magic power was blasting everywhere. My father instantly shattered the magic circle. He stared in absolute disbelief at the raw magical energy bouncing wildly around the room. His face immediately turned dead serious. Did you just release the magic power from inside your body? Honestly, even I didn't expect this tiny body to channel mana so soon. Just as I was scrambling for an excuse so I wouldn't blow my cover, my father suddenly changed the subject. That's my boy, a true son of Saxon. He looked at me from behind, bursting with pride. He was already plotting what to get me for my birthday. 1 week later, father threw me a massive birthday bash. The halls were packed with nobles. They were all dying to meet the young master. But me? I was hiding away on the second floor. After spending my past life being treated like a dog, having everyone bow to me as a young lord felt incredibly awkward. But honestly, I was way more concerned about what went down in the study last night. When I stumbled upon the records of my past life defeating the Demon King, the mana inside me just exploded. I totally lost control. With a magical resonance that intense, it was obvious. This body was literally built for necromancy. Just then, my mother walked over. And to my surprise, she had a mysterious guest with her. She told me this stranger was my birthday present. This is an elder from the Blue Magic Tower. She's the top water mage on the entire continent, Lady Sophia. From now on, she's going to be your teacher. But to everyone's shock, Sophia immediately asked to speak with me in private. It wasn't until we slipped away from the crowd that she told me why. Those piercing blue eyes of hers had already seen right through me. She knew that I had absolutely zero interest in tame, gentle water magic. What I really wanted was my father's dark necromancy. But it's a shame, she sighed. Your mother made it crystal clear. I am only allowed to teach you water magic. Years ago, at their wedding, your father swore an oath. He promised he would never teach necromancy to his children. Even the tower elders, who never take off their black robes, actually wore pure white suits that day. It was completely unheard of. It just goes to show how serious your father is. If you're hoping to learn dark magic, you're out of luck. I shot back instantly. Don't you find necromancy and dark magic terrifying? You're an elf. You live by the laws of nature. But her response completely caught me off guard. When a priest casts resurrection, they call it a divine miracle, she said. But when a necromancer does the exact same thing, suddenly it's forbidden witchcraft. As far as I'm concerned, there's zero difference. Hearing that, it clicked. She wasn't like those stubborn, traditional elves at all. She might actually be an incredible teacher. So, I agreed to study under her on the spot. Once she found out I had already condensed mana fragments a few days ago, she started showing me how to forge them into a complete mana circuit. Doing as she asked, I placed both hands over my heart and focused my mind. I could feel it. This world wasn't like Earth. The very air here was thick with raw mana. But unless you were an ancient creature, like a dragon, nobody could just grab and use that raw energy straight from the air. To actually use it, you needed a mana circuit near your heart to act like a power plant. You had to gather the fragments scattered around your heart, piece them together, and build a stable loop. She kept guiding me. Slowly now. Let the mana flow around your heart. It usually takes an entire month to build a stable circuit. So, don't rush it. Before she could even finish her sentence, I looked up. Teacher? I think I'm done. I opened my palm. A glowing magic circle slowly formed in my hand. Sophia looked like her brain had just short-circuited. An 8-year-old kid had just done in a few minutes. What took normal people a whole month? It totally shattered everything she knew about magic. She just stared at me, her voice shaking. I had to play it cool. I mean, for a regular person, just scraping mana fragments together was nearly impossible. That's why in my past life, I had to rely on magic seals carved right into my flesh, just to barely scrape by casting combat spells. But this time is different. I've got the actual bloodline of the Master of the Dark Tower running through my veins. This body can naturally absorb mana from the environment. I immediately channeled the mana inside me straight to my fingertips. Then used my magic circuits to manifest it physically, shaping it into an ice crystal bullet that could pierce the very throat of the Empire. Staring at this indestructible ice bullet, Sophia was completely bewildered. Normally, once mana leaves the body, its physical form should just dissipate into thin air. But this child, he crystallized it perfectly. Right as she was trying to process this, I fired the ice bullet straight at the massive tree behind her. The tough bark was instantly shredded, like wet paper. And then, with a deafening blast, the ice bullet exploded, blowing the 2-meter-thick trunk clean in half. Sophia stood there, absolutely paralyzed with shock. Just who on earth is this kid? How could he unleash such vicious, overwhelming magic? He even used the exact tactical sequence of military-grade spells. First, hyper-rotating the mana, then accelerating it to the absolute limit. And finally, extreme compression. These are forbidden techniques, specifically designed for slaughtering enemies on the battlefield. And he's just a little boy. Yet he cast it effortlessly. The more Sophia thought about it, the colder her blood ran. She immediately sought out my father, the Duke. I simply cannot be Dale's teacher anymore. The Black Duke stared at her, deeply confused. Dale mastered magic circuits in a matter of minutes. Shouldn't you be pushing him even harder? But he instantly fired off a military-grade spell. Hearing this, my father's face immediately darkened. Military magic is strictly an art of killing. This meant that his son, at only 8 years old, was already fully capable of murder. My father shot back. Isn't your blue magic tower famous for its defensive magic? Are you telling me even your people can't teach him? Sophia slowly shook her head. The young master already has his heart set on something else. And that is necromancy. Hearing that forbidden word, Black Duke's heart skipped a heavy beat. I know about the promise you made to your wife, Your Grace. But that doesn't give you the right to strip a child of his future. Especially not when he possesses such terrifying magical talent. Eavesdropping by the door, I couldn't make out a single word of their conversation. I just figured that the spell I cast earlier must have completely terrified Miss Sophia. Sigh, I really need to dial back my power from now on. Hey, Dale. A sudden, booming voice snapped me out of my thoughts. It was my absolute favorite person, Uncle Helmet. Oh man, it's been ages since I last saw him. Uncle Helmet instantly scooped me up and hoisted me high into the air. Judging by how he looked, he definitely just got back from raiding a dungeon. You see, a knight's entire purpose is to conquer dungeon after dungeon, hunting down the filthy monsters that crawl out of them. And the dungeon outbreaks here in the Duchy of Saxony are at least 10 times worse than anywhere else. But the crazy part? The one who caused all this is me. After I killed the Demon King in my past life, my father, the Black Duke, was ordered to conquer the Demon King's former territory. But who could have guessed that the dungeons in this wasteland would turn out to be the most heavily infested dumping grounds? Let's be real, the Empire just dumped this massive, deadly mess right onto my father's lap. Later, my mother warmly congratulated me on mastering Tier 1 magic circuits. Whatever reward you want, sweetheart, just ask your father. I tilted my head, pretending to think hard, and smiled. I want a little baby sister. The moment I said that, both my parents turned beetroot red. We will try our best. Later that night I collapsed onto my bed, groaning. Man, acting like a clueless little kid all day is utterly exhausting. I passed out almost instantly. And then the nightmares returned. The gruesome, bloody memory of the Grand General backstabbing me in my previous life. I jolted awake, gasping for air. My heart was pounding, uncontrollably leaking volatile mana in every direction. It felt like my chest was going to burst open. I instantly knew what was happening. This was mana overload. I stumbled out of bed, thinking some fresh air outside might calm it down, but it only got worse. Even breathing felt like swallowing glass. Right at that moment, Miss Sophia sensed the incredibly dangerous aura radiating from me. She quietly slipped up behind me, seeing me completely doubled over in agony. She instantly understood what was happening. Without a second thought, she reached out, her hands glowing with soothing mana. She gently placed her hand over my heart. When she felt the surging mana inside me, her eyes flew wide open. This child's talent was completely beyond imagination. If I ever went down the wrong path, the consequences would be catastrophic. After calming the violent mana inside me, her expression turned dead serious. The magic inside you is incredibly dangerous. So, I want to be the teacher who guides you onto the right path. She handed me a book. I looked down, and to my surprise, it was a grimoire of dark magic. Happy birthday. Looking at her gentle, warm face, I couldn't hold back anymore and threw my arms around her. Fast forward a few days later, Sophia took me to the northern woodlands and found a cute, fluffy white, and innocent little rabbit. It was my target for this training. I immediately formed a magic circuit, and swiftly fired an ice bullet right at the rabbit. It pierced cleanly right through its body. But Sophia's gaze was fixed entirely on my face. You don't feel a single ounce of pity for this rabbit, do you? Seeing my blank stare, she continued. The essence of magic is a mirror to the human heart. It uses mana particles to project your deepest thoughts. Even if it's the exact same spell, it will look completely different depending on the mage casting it. This is exactly how the great magic towers came to be. The red tower maintains order through absolute authority, while the blue tower cherishes harmony. Besides those, there are also the black tower, white tower, green tower, yellow tower, and so on. The core philosophy of every tower is reflected directly in their magic. Then, realizing this was a bit too deep for me, Sophia dropped the subject and told me to continue my training. Actually, the most basic necromancy involves using threads of mana to control a puppet's movements. I attached mana threads to every part of the rabbit's body. A second later, the dead rabbit slowly stood up on its feet and snapped open its eerie, glowing red eyes. Seeing this, Sophia nodded in satisfaction and told me to move on to the next task. I formed a magic circle once again and cast frost armor on the rabbit. The moment it hit, its body was instantly covered in a thick layer of solid ice armor. Now, it's time to test how strong this armor really is. Sophia quickly formed her own magic circle, and a spell blasted straight toward the rabbit. To our surprise, the rabbit's frost armor actually managed to withstand the fierce attack. I couldn't help but cheer, looking up at her with eyes full of anticipation. Teacher, along with necromancy, I want to learn water magic too. Absolutely not. Sophia rejected the idea without a second thought. You're being too greedy. It's already incredibly hard for a beginner to master just one type of magic. People who can wield two types of magic at once are known as dual-element mages. That requires an insanely high level of talent and control. At your age, it's simply impossible. But even after the lesson ended, I just couldn't let it go. I went home that night, hauled out every related grimoire I could find, and stayed up all night reading through them. The next day, Teacher Sophia was completely startled by the heavy, dark circles under my eyes. Before she could even say a word, I immediately summoned the rabbit from yesterday. A magic circle instantly expanded from my palm. After a flash of light, the glacial armor on the rabbit exploded with a deafening boom. Sophia's heart skipped a beat at the sight. But it wasn't over yet. 2.5 seconds later, the rabbit's flesh violently detonated from the inside out. Crushed bones and jagged ice crystals flew everywhere like deadly shrapnel. I had actually managed to pull off a double explosion. My eyes sparkled with excitement. Teacher, I perfectly fused necromancy with water magic. Does this mean I'm a dual-element mage now? Teacher Sophia didn't even have time to answer me. She was too busy throwing up an emergency shield to protect herself. Shielding herself from the flying crystals and debris, she stared fixedly at the scene before her. She had never seen an attack like this before. The double explosion had caused massive, widespread destruction. Magic like this was usually reserved for ruthless slaughter on the battlefield. but looking at my innocent face. Her feelings were incredibly conflicted. Just then, the sound of approaching footsteps broke the silence. It was Uncle Helmet. I asked him what was going on, and learned that he had just returned from leading the Black Cavalry on a dungeon raid, and he mentioned they had put up quite a fight. I actually knew a bit about the Black Cavalry from my previous life. Clad in armor and wielding spears that radiated a mysterious aura, they were the invincible cavalry unit of the Saxony Duchy. And their commander, the man standing right in front of me, Sir Helmet, was a legendary figure, hailed as one of the continent's 7 holy knights. A golden opportunity was staring me right in the face. I immediately spoke up. "Uncle, I want to learn swordsmanship from you." Helmet laughed and said I was welcome anytime. Then, he led his troops off to their next mission. As soon as we returned to the castle, Sophia immediately went to see my parents. She told them that I had become a dual-element mage. My father's expression instantly darkened. "Didn't I tell you to only teach him water magic? But as a teacher, I must teach my student the knowledge he truly desires." My mother frowned. "You just need to stick to teaching him water magic. Don't get involved in anything else." Sophia smiled and agreed, but as she turned away, she was eaten up with guilt for breaking her oath to the Black Duke. After all, she was entirely to blame for Dale learning dual magic. As soon as she left, my mother forced a light-hearted smile. "Our boy is quite amazing, isn't he? To become a dual-element mage at just 8 years old." But my father was pacing restlessly. Truth be told, even he was deeply intimidated by the boy's magical talent. He hesitated before speaking up. "Can I teach Dale necromancy? He is the future lord. He needs to have the power to control everything. And as the strongest necromancer on the continent, I want to pass on everything I know to my son." With that, he lowered his head deeply. My mother stayed silent for a long time. "You know exactly how terribly people view necromancy. Behind our backs, they call it a filthy murderer's art. That's exactly why I was so strictly against you teaching him in the first place." But now my mother gently stroked my father's face. "I want you to mold him into a mage even more powerful than you are. So powerful, that he can crush all those malicious rumors." My father's heart leapt, and he pulled her into a tight, emotional embrace. "I am the luckiest man alive to have married such an understanding woman." And just like that, my special training in necromancy officially began. I brought out a pure white little bunny once again, and showed my father the necromancy skills I had figured out on my own. He immediately frowned at the sight. His face was filled with disappointment. "What in the world have you been learning?" He then took me down into the underground magic workshop beneath the castle. With a sweep of his hand, dozens of spellbooks seemingly appeared out of thin air right in front of me. First, memorize the skeletal and muscular structures of all living creatures. "Do you understand me?" Under my father's solemn gaze, I gave a firm nod. Then, I buried myself in that massive pile of books, devouring every single page of those highly technical medical texts. With my photographic memory, I was even able to recite the entire contents by heart. Once my father tested and approved my knowledge, we moved straight on to practical exercises. To my shock, he actually brought in a dead goblin this time. Seeing my confusion, he explained, a weak, inexperienced necromancer could be given the corpse of a sword saint, and they'd still only manage to make it hop around a bit like a mindless zombie. But a true master of the dark arts can take the body of an ordinary foot soldier, and make it fight like a terrifying death knight. "Now, come on, make this goblin move." So I immediately used the exact same technique I used to control the rabbit. But a goblin's anatomy is hundreds of times more complicated than a rabbit's. The difficulty skyrocketed, and if I messed up even a little bit, the magic threads would just snap. I had no choice but to stiffen the corpse to anchor the threads. Even then, it took me forever to get them all wrapped around it. But the frustrating part was, no matter how hard I pushed my mana, the stiffened goblin just wouldn't budge. Just as I was at a total loss, my father patted my shoulder. "Stiffening the corpse will obviously limit its movement," he said. "Watch closely." I watched as he raised his hand. An overwhelming wave of dark magic instantly swept through the entire room. Then, it transformed into countless magic threads thinner than a hair and swiftly pierced right into the goblin's body. Within seconds, its stiff body loosened up. And the terrifying part was, sharp bone claws suddenly sprouted from its flesh. It looked like some kind of monstrous rebirth. Its combat power was now dozens of times stronger than when it was alive. My father looked down at me. "The purpose of ribs is to protect the internal organs," he explained. "But a corpse doesn't need that kind of protection. We can reshape those useless bones into deadly weapons. But first, you have to thoroughly understand their anatomy. Only then can you mold them into whatever form you desire. This is the very foundation of dark magic." The scene playing out right in front of me left me absolutely speechless. I couldn't help but ask, "Then what kind of philosophy does dark magic actually follow?" My father gave a faint smile. "Dark magic seeks the truth," he said. "And the truth is almost always hidden within death. If you want to pursue the truth, you must first understand the true weight of life." Those words instantly threw me back to my past life, back to those dark days when I was shackled by those hypocritical mages. I used to just blindly execute their kill orders. In the end, I couldn't even tell the difference between right and wrong anymore. Back then, I didn't even feel human. I was nothing more than a blade gripped in someone else's hand. Dale, what's wrong? My father's voice snapped me right out of my thoughts. I forced myself to stay calm and told him I was fine. Under the guidance of the continent's strongest dark mage, my power was growing at an insane pace. However, the news that my father, Duke Saxon, was secretly teaching me dark magic had spread all over the empire. This completely shattered the sacred vow he made when he married my mother. And it made me the absolute center of everyone's gossip. The nobles of the empire were secretly watching my every single move. That day, I was practicing sword fighting with Uncle Helmet, just like always. But now, I wasn't just stuck playing defense. I could actually find little openings to strike back. Just a moment ago, I firmly blocked one of his heavy slashes. And just as I was about to counterattack, Helmet suddenly took a step back. And quickly raised his wooden sword high over his head to charge an attack. Seeing this, I immediately stopped in my tracks. And perfectly dodged his heavy blow. Then, the exact second he pulled his sword back, I lunged forward and swung with all my might, knocking his wooden sword straight to the ground. Helmet completely froze in place. That was an absolutely beautiful move, but to me a true knight would never, ever let his weapon slip out of his hands. So, I had to ask, you were going easy on me on purpose just now, weren't you? Helmet picked up his sword and shook his head. No, I wasn't. Honestly, that strike of yours just now? In a real fight, that could easily take a normal man's life. He looked down at the blisters and calluses on my hands from all the training, his eyes full of sympathy. You're a mage. There's no need for you to push yourself so hard with a sword. You'll always have plenty of knights around to protect you. As he gently bandaged my hands, he asked me why I was working so desperately hard to learn swordsmanship. I didn't even hesitate. I'm the son of the strongest Dark Duke on the entire continent. If I have to rely on guards every time I step outside, I'd be the laughingstock of the empire. Besides, how could I ever pass up the chance to learn from one of the 7 great sword saints like you? Those few words flattered Uncle Helmet so much that he couldn't even hide the massive grin on his face. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out. I turned around, and it was Mom. She said she had some wonderful news to share. It was about the gift I had asked for on my birthday. Honestly, I couldn't even remember what it was. Wait a minute, could it be that time I casually mentioned wanting a little sister? Seeing my shocked expression, Mom knew I had already figured it out. You have to take really good care of your little sister from now on, okay? 10 months flew by, and our family welcomed a brand new member. A chubby, adorable baby sister. Dad asked me to hold her. I took her in my arms with extra care. But the weirdest thing happened. Even when Dad held her, she would fuss and cry. Yet, safe in my arms, she didn't make a single peep. Dad leaned in and asked how it felt. I looked down at the tiny little thing resting against my chest. She is incredibly light to hold, but somehow, she feels so heavy in my heart. Dad gave a warm, proud smile. That, my son, is the weight of a life. Dale, don't you ever forget that feeling. I nodded, only half understanding what he meant. When it was time for my magic lesson, Miss Sophia's first words completely caught me off guard. No theory today. We are having a real, live combat drill. I want you to use absolutely everything you have got, and attack me. Without hesitation, I made the first move. I raised my hand, instantly forming a razor-sharp ice bullet, and blasted it right at her. But with a single, effortless wave of her arm, the ice bullet shattered into a million glittering pieces right in midair. She caught a falling shard of ice, and her expression instantly darkened. Dale, how dare you hold back against your teacher? In the blink of an eye, she ruthlessly hurled the icy shard straight at my face. It was flying at me like a rocket. I had barely a single second to summon my frost armor. I threw my hands up just in time to block the attack. Seeing my lightning-fast reflexes, Miss Sophia looked faintly pleased, though her tone remained dead serious. Now show me what you can really do. I instantly locked in. I slammed both palms against the ground. The sharp, cracking sound of freezing ice echoed out. In an instant, a massive wall of ice erupted from the earth, towering between the two of us. She noticed that I had completely altered the ice's structure, making the wall even tougher than solid steel. Still, she looked puzzled. Are you just going to hide behind a wall? Or are you just stalling for time? But a split second later, the ice wall suddenly detonated. A massive shockwave of jagged ice shards blasted outward in every direction. The spikes tore straight through her body. A thick cloud of frozen mist swallowed the room. The truth was, I had used a compression spell, crushing the density of every single ice crystal to its absolute limit. The destructive force was far deadlier than a hand grenade, but as the icy mist finally cleared, I completely froze in terror. Right before my eyes, Miss Sophia's body was riddled with gaping, bloody holes. I screamed in absolute horror. Miss Sophia, ha ha ha, were you calling for me? Miss Sophia strolled out from behind me, totally unharmed and laughing. It finally hit me, the mangled corpse was just an illusionary clone. I let out a massive sigh of relief. I frantically apologized, swearing I didn't mean to hurt her. But she just crouched down, looking at me with incredibly gentle eyes. Going all out like that, it means you have absolute trust in me. I am so proud of you, Dale. Later that day, my father urgently summoned Miss Sophia. To his shock, she showed up covered in fresh wounds. He couldn't fathom who could possibly wound a high-level mage like her. But Miss Sophia merely brushed it off with a smile. It is just a few scratches. Nothing to worry about. The Black Duke finally settled down and spoke with a grave tone. Recently, a reckless pack of orcs managed to cross the mountain range. They are trying to invade the Empire's territory. I am planning to take Dale with me to wipe them out. Miss Sophia immediately shook her head in fierce protest. Absolutely not. Dale is only 8 years old. He doesn't need to fight on the front lines. My father cut her off. His presence was so overwhelming that she couldn't even argue. I need him to understand. That is the eldest son of the Saxony family. Protecting this land is his duty. No, it is his ultimate calling. As soon as he said that, Sophia broke out in a cold sweat. Unable to speak, she simply nodded. Then, the Black Duke shifted his tone. I plan to bestow a family heirloom upon Dale, and I want you to help him master it. The treasure my father mentioned was no ordinary divine artifact. To wield its power, one had to pay an unimaginably agonizing price. After all, the more powerful a holy relic is, the deadlier the backlash. At best, it shatters your mana veins and leaves you crippled. At worst, it devours your soul and kills you on the spot. Yet, the Saxony family had completely mastered this forbidden power long ago. My father suddenly turned around and looked at me. Dale, as the sole heir to this family, it is time you prepare for the battles to come. Battles. I was caught off guard, but honestly I was thrilled. My father nodded, saying he was going to take me along on an expedition to hunt down the orcs. But before we marched out, I had to learn how to control the dark powers passed down through our family line. So, he led us down into a hidden vault deep beneath the castle. I was completely stunned by what I saw. The place was packed to the brim with weapons and armor. It was a massive, underground armory. Everywhere I looked, I saw incredibly rare treasures. These are the spoils of war our ancestors claimed when hunting demons. He gave me a stern warning. Every artifact in here pulses with an immense amount of magic. Do not touch anything until you've learned how to control it. But when he turned around, I was already gone. I couldn't hold back anymore and went straight to exploring. As I walked past a massive shield, I actually heard it whisper to me, "Pick me up." Suddenly, all sorts of weapons started calling out to me. Choose me, and you'll possess invincible power. But I didn't feel a thing. None of this was enough. I wanted something that truly belonged to me. An ultimate treasure that would make me a legend in a single battle. Right at that moment, a pitch-black cloak drifted silently in front of me like a living shadow. I took a closer look, and my heart skipped a beat. It was the legendary Cloak of Shadows. In my past life, I saw the commander of the Demon King's army, Duke Boda, wearing this exact same cloak in battle. It was a top-tier holy relic, capable of turning illusions into absolute reality. Without a second thought, I threw the cloak over my shoulders. Just as my father and Miss Sophia caught up to me, before they could even say a word, a terrifying shadow erupted from the fabric. Complete darkness swallowed me whole. The very next second, I was dragged into an endless void. The only thing I could hear was a creepy voice echoing over and over again. "I'm so hungry." I realized immediately that the Cloak of Shadows was way beyond any ordinary weapon. It could summon apocalyptic dark storms, but only if you treated it like a living creature. If I wanted to truly master it, I had to make it completely submit to me. Right on cue, several shadowy figures burst out of thin air. They opened their massive, bloodthirsty jaws and lunged right at me. Meanwhile, outside the void, my father and Sophia were panicking. "It's been so long. Can the young master even survive this?" Sophia's voice was trembling with absolute fear. My father frowned deeply. He knew that the longer I stayed trapped in that dark domain, the more likely I was to be consumed by the shadows forever. I can't let this go on any longer. Just as he was about to force a spell to drag me out, the black sphere trapping me violently exploded from the inside out. The shadows shattered into smoke and faded away. I casually walked out, without a single scratch on me. But my father's face was painted with sheer disbelief. He, better than anyone else, knew just how deadly that relic really was. To see this deadly weapon submit to an 8-year-old boy without a fight, it completely shattered his worldview. I ran up to my father, buzzing with excitement. "Can I try out the other holy relics too?" That question left them both completely stunned. I mean, even for fully grown warriors, gaming just one holy relic is practically a death sentence. But seeing that I didn't have a single scratch on me, my father finally nodded. And so, under the watchful eyes of the guards, I rummaged through every single treasure in the secret vault. It wasn't until the day we headed to the training grounds that Uncle Helmet immediately locked his eyes on the cloak I was wearing. He was totally shocked. "This Cloak of Shadows is incredibly dangerous. Can you actually control it?" "It just stung a little bit at first. That's all." Uncle's face instantly twisted into the exact same look of utter disbelief my father had. So, I tried to explain. It actually came to me on its own. Maybe it just wants to be friends? Right as I said that, a tiny shadowy figure suddenly peeked its head out from the ground. I quickly stomped it back down with my foot, then spun around and challenged my uncle. Can we have a real, all-out duel? Helmet was taken aback for a second. But then he immediately drew his sword. Anytime, kid. Feeling the terrifying, explosive aura radiating from him, the sheer pressure made me instantly regret my big mouth. I mean, I was standing in front of one of the continent's 7 holy knights. Uncle saw right through my hesitation. He chuckled, and casually offered to go easy on me. But hearing that just ticked me off. He was clearly looking down on me. I immediately channeled the power within the cloak. To be honest, my real goal here was to use a holy knight's strength to test out this cloak of shadows. The key to winning this fight was figuring out what kind of weapon I could shape the shadows into. I gathered my energy and charged straight at him. Shadow blade, strike. Uncle Helmet swung his blade just once and completely shattered my shadow into pieces. Without missing a beat, he raised his heavy sword and lunged right at me at breakneck speed. I smoothly backstepped, dodging it perfectly, and used the momentum to spread the shadows right under his feet. In a flash, countless spikes erupted from the ground. The sudden trap definitely caught him off guard, but he quickly regained his balance and charged at me once again. Immediately summoned the power of the shadows to meet him head-on, and forcefully blocked his heavy strike. You have to understand, the sheer force of his swing could easily cleave a normal sword clean in half. But that just proved how insanely powerful the Cloak of Shadows really was. There was no way I could have survived that hit otherwise. For the rest of the match, Helmet launched attack after attack. I kept dodging, using the shadows to parry and maneuver around him. The knights watching around the training grounds were left completely speechless. Normally, they couldn't even survive 2 hits from my uncle. And yet here I was, an 8-year-old kid, actually holding my own against him for 10 full rounds. The night before we marched out, my mother was understandably worried sick. Sending a child as young as me to a life-or-death battlefield, it was a crazy, unheard-of risk. She made me promise over and over again that I would come back safely. Right after that, I headed to the assembly point. Helmet had the black cavalry lined up and ready to go. He was just about to ask my father for the order to march, when my father suddenly turned his head. His sharp gaze locked right onto me. This time you will give the order to march. I totally froze. This black cavalry is the absolute pride of our ducal house. They will be yours to command eventually anyway. From this day forward, they are your knights. Hearing that, my heart practically exploded with joy. In my past life, I was nothing but a lone wolf, but in this life, I actually have the continent's most elite order of knights at my back. I turned to the legion and yelled at the top of my lungs, "Warriors, move out!" The black cavalry raised their long spears into the air with a roaring cheer, and we began our march. For this campaign, we had exactly 250 black cavalry riding with us. But according to our intel, the orc tribe we were intercepting was 1,000 strong, and they had already crossed the mountain range. They're currently entrenched in the upper reaches of the Saxon River. It won't be long before they start moving downstream. We have to beat them to it. We need to quickly cross the lower river and launch a surprise attack. The key to getting the entire legion across the river safely all rests on Professor Sophia. Seeing her there, I was completely caught off guard, but so relieved. You have to understand, the elves have always strictly followed their creed of peace. Getting them to join a war is normally impossible. But this time, she actually volunteered. I watched as she walked right up to the edge of the waterfall, bent down, and unleashed her ice magic. In the blink of an eye, a crystal clear, virtually indestructible ice bridge formed. Just like that, we safely crossed a river hundreds of meters wide. We quietly sneaked up near the orcs' makeshift camp. Everyone went prone in the tall grass, waiting for the perfect moment. As soon as night fell, the knights quickly lit their torches. A storm of flaming arrows rained down on the camp, instantly turning it into a sea of fire. The sudden ambush caught the orcs completely off guard. They broke into total chaos in seconds. The casualties were massive. Suddenly, Helmet leapt up. "Charge!" he roared at the cavalry. The riders quickly fell into their attack formation, thundering down the hillside in a massive wave. I stood on the high ground, watching it all unfold. Their speed must have hit at least 40 miles an hour. The heavy armor made their momentum unstoppable, just like a landslide of boulders. All that kinetic energy would focus right at the tip of their lances. Combine that with the magic flowing through them, it was enough to pierce through any creature or armor on the continent. I couldn't help but be in awe. This is just an absolute massacre, I thought. That's right, this is the true power of the Saxon Black Cavalry, my father said, his voice beaming with pride. But Helmet quickly chimed in with a warning. We can't let our guard down just yet. Before he could even finish his sentence, the orcs had already spotted our charge. They quickly raised their shields, forming a tight defensive wall. But just as the cavalry was about to crash into them, Helmet did something completely unthinkable. Fall back. All forces, retreat, he roared. A signal flare shot high into the sky. Seeing the signal, the cavalry didn't hesitate for a second. They yanked their reins and turned right around. It turned out, Helmet had a different plan. Even though the ambush was a huge success, it wasn't quite enough to wipe them out entirely. He knew that the only way to crush them completely was to fall back and reposition our forces. This sudden retreat left the orcs standing there in total confusion. Thinking their defensive formation had actually scared us off, they seized the chance and hurled a massive volley of spears at us. One of the spears struck true, impaling a rider at the very back of the formation. The horses, unfortunately, didn't have heavy armor to protect them. "Damn it, we still took casualties," my father muttered, a deep sense of regret in his voice. Seeing the rider go down, the orcs immediately rushed out to finish him off. I was stomping my feet in pure panic. Are we seriously just going to stand here and watch him die? My father and Helmet just stood there in grim silence. The distance was simply too far. There was absolutely no time to reach him. If we wanted to save that knight, we needed a single, ultra-long range strike that could pierce right through the orc's rock-hard armor. But an orc's hide is infinitely thicker than any normal monster's. My standard ice magic wouldn't even leave a scratch. There was only one way to pull this off. I had to take my ice magic and combine it with the physical mechanics of a bullet. I needed to replicate the exact firing mechanism of a sniper rifle. Luckily, back on Earth, I spent my entire life around guns. Every single component of a Barrett sniper rifle was permanently etched into my brain. I immediately channeled my mana and materialized the weapon. A split second later, a deafening crack exploded from my fingertips. Way out in the distance, the orc's head just completely exploded. The sheer brutality of it left my father and Helmet in absolute shock. The moment the shot landed, I spurred my horse and charged straight out. Helmet instinctually reached out to stop me for my own safety, but my father put a hand on his arm to hold him back. To be able to invent his own unique magic formula at his age, my father muttered. He's practically a grown man now. Let him go. Back on the battlefield, seeing his comrade drop dead, another orc was already winding up, charging straight for the critically injured rider on the ground. But that magic formula was way too complicated. There's no way I could use it in a real fight. Drawing on my knowledge from my past life, I quickly simplified the formula. Just when the orc was a mere meter away from the rider, a second ice crystal bullet ripped through the air. It pierced straight through the beast's skull. The rider looked bewildered, wondering why I'd risk my life to save him. But I just looked him dead in the eye. The House of Saxony never abandons a loyal knight. Right as I spoke, two more orcs lunged at us. But this time, I wasn't going to use the Barrett ice crystal. It was time to test out the power of the shadow cloak. Shadow blades. Instantly, the darkness shifted, morphing into countless razor-sharp blades. They violently shredded through the orc's body, and then they actually devoured it whole. It was reduced to a pile of stark white bones in seconds. The horrifying sight left the last remaining orc completely paralyzed with fear. I tilted my head and smirked. "You're still not running away?" Before I even finished speaking, the shadows surged forward again, completely swallowing the final orc. I walked over to the rider, only to realize his legs were completely paralyzed. Left with no other choice, I had to carry him back to our camp bridal style. Once I returned, Helmet saw that the enemy's formation was completely shattered, and immediately roared the order to charge. Black Knights swiftly trampled the entire orc encampment. Later that night, my father called me into his command tent. His expression was terrifyingly grim. He started off by acknowledging my bravery in saving a comrade. But then his tone sharply changed. "But how dare you charge into the enemy lines alone? That was beyond foolish. Tell me exactly why you did that." I didn't understand why he was reprimanding me, but I braced myself and answered. "You told me that I would be the one leading the Black Knights in the future. I was merely fulfilling my duty to protect them." Hearing this, a faint, hidden smile briefly crossed his lips, but he quickly pulled a stern face again. "That reason is not good enough." I was completely baffled. My father had always cherished his knights more than anything. Why was he reprimanding me for saving one? I couldn't hold back and shouted, "Was I just supposed to stand there and watch him die right in front of me?" At those words, my father slowly stood up. "The lands under my command are infested with demons. When my knights march into battle, they never expect anyone to come to their rescue. A true knight must learn to survive on the battlefield using their own judgment and sheer willpower. What you did will only make them complacent, thinking there's always someone there to bail them out. That kind of mindset is the most fatal trap on any battlefield. Every single fight is a trial by fire. We only step in when they have been pushed to their absolute limits." Hearing his words, I lowered my head in deep shame. It was an undeniable, brutal truth of war. But then, my father gently patted my shoulder. "However, Dale, it's a good thing that you have your own convictions. Never lose that fire inside you." Practically overnight, the story of me rescuing the rider spread across the entire empire. Some even claimed that I slaughtered 1,000 orcs single-handedly. The rumors just kept getting wilder. Honestly, I was mortified. But these epic tales did manage to inject the empire with a much-needed surge of energy and pride. A few days later, I headed down to the training grounds. The knights immediately stood at attention, saluting me with the utmost respect. The sheer enthusiasm and deafening cheers almost drowned me out. Suddenly, a maid's urgent voice cut through the noise. Young master, the guests from the Ohart family have arrived in the main hall. Hearing that name, a cold shiver ran down my spine. Balder of the Ohart family, he was the man I had personally slain in my previous life. He was one of the continent's 7 greatest holy knights. And it was entirely because of his death that the Teutonic Knights were swallowed up by the Empire, leaving the Ohart family to fall into complete ruin. What made things even more incredibly twisted was that Balder was the very mentor who guided Uncle Helmut down the path of a knight. My chest tightened with a heavy, complicated swirl of guilt. By the time we hurried to the front hall, we saw a young woman dressed in deep black mourning clothes. Right by her side was a little blonde girl, no older than 9. It was Sir Balder's widow and his daughter. But what caught me off guard even more was the mother and daughter had arrived entirely on their own, without a single attendant to escort them. It was painfully obvious they had hit rock bottom. The woman in black bowed her head respectfully. "I am Vanessa Ohart. I offer my deepest respects to the Duke of Saxony. And this is my daughter, Charlotte." "Mother, why are you bowing down to these pathetic people?" Charlotte suddenly shrieked at the top of her lungs. She didn't even try to hide her hostility. Frantic and embarrassed, Vanessa immediately scolded her. But my father calmly broke the awkward silence. "Dale, why don't you show Lady Charlotte around the castle?" I reached out my hand to offer her an invitation. But she viciously swatted my hand away and screamed, "Don't touch me." Her outburst left absolutely everyone in the room stunned. Even my little sister, who had been sound asleep, jolted awake. And with that, Charlotte just turned and ran right out the door. Watching her go, Vanessa offered a helpless explanation. "Our family has been through a tragedy. The trauma has made her so erratic and so quick to anger." Her voice began to tremble. "That man he tried to violate my daughter. The new Count Brandon, the Imperial Holy Knight they call the Pig Lord. He discovered the Sword Saint's bloodline running through Charlotte's veins. The monster actually wanted to force her to bear his child. Even though she's still just a little girl, Charlotte barely managed to escape, but it left her deeply traumatized." Tears spilled down Vanessa's cheeks as she spoke. "I'm nothing but a ruined noble now. I just don't have the power to protect her anymore. I'm begging you, please, take her in as a maid for the Saxony household. Just let her stay far away from that demon." Hearing this tragic story, the Black Duke and his wife couldn't help but feel a deep wave of pity. Meanwhile, I already had a pretty good idea of where Charlotte had run off to. As a knight's daughter, there was only one place she'd be: the training grounds. Sure enough, the moment I got there, I spotted her. Her eyes were completely bloodshot. She had clearly just been crying. I fully intended to let her earlier rudeness slide, but the look in her eyes was utterly feral. She drew her sword and pointed it straight at me. "Fight me. Let's duel. I've heard the rumors about you, the invincible warrior who slaughtered 1,000 orcs single-handedly to save those knights. I'm going to beat you. I have to prove I'm stronger, so I can finally protect myself from that monster, Brandon." The second I heard the name Brandon, my blood began to boil. I could never forget that despicable coward. I just never expected our paths to cross again so soon. And I definitely didn't expect Charlotte and I to share the exact same enemy. Alright, then I decided to see just what this little girl was made of. "Give me everything you've got," I taunted. Every single swing of Charlotte's blade was completely fueled by pure, unadulterated hatred and bloodlust. She moved with incredible agility. Her speed was just unbelievable. She even managed to channel a knight's unique aura energy, the limit-breaking power that gathers deep within their bodies. It was exactly like a mage's mana circle. Seeing this, the truth was obvious. She was quite literally born to be a knight, gifted with the most terrifying, innate combat instincts I'd ever seen. But even with all that raw talent, I was still leagues ahead of her. Between strikes, she told me about the knights after her father had passed away. How her mother would sit with her every single evening, telling her grand tales of her father's legend, whispering that Charlotte was the true heir to the divine sword. The harsh reality was she couldn't even lay a scratch on me. With one clean strike, I sent the sword flying right out of her hands. Crushed and humiliated, she collapsed to her knees, screaming through her tears, Why can't I ever win?" I calmly sheathed my weapon. "Because you are not the divine sword himself. With the level of strength you have right now, you don't stand a chance in hell against someone like Brandon. His swordsmanship is easily dozens of times deadlier than mine." Hearing those words, Charlotte's face twisted in absolute agony. "But my family was destroyed. We lost everything. I've been pushed to the very edge, but I never once stopped training." Before the words even left her mouth, she lunged at me in a desperate surprise attack. The tip of her blade was aimed straight for my heart, but I blocked it effortlessly, shutting her down once again. Looking down at her shattered, defeated spirit, a heavy knot formed in my stomach. Every ounce of pain she was feeling right now was entirely my fault. If I hadn't struck down Balder in my past life, she would still be a happy, carefree little girl, safe by her sword saint father's side. Right then and there, I made a silent vow. I would become the ultimate guardian of the Ohart family. Until she grows strong enough to defeat that demon on her own, I will protect you. Charlotte's head snapped up, her face full of confusion. "Why?" "Because your potential is immense. But only on the condition that you pledge your absolute loyalty to the Saxon family." The moment I said that, without a single second of hesitation she dropped to one knee. I, Charlotte Oakhart, swear upon my honor as a knight. I shall become Master Dale's blade. I shall become the blade of the Saxon family. Behind that seemingly childish promise lay the burning resolve within both of us. Later on, when Vanessa suggested Charlotte work as a maid, I actually thought she'd refuse. After all, she used to be a noble lady. But she agreed right away. Seeing this, my father asked out of pure curiosity, just what exactly happened between you and that girl? I looked at him and said, she is the sole surviving bloodline of the Holy Sword. Her talents are exceptional. We made a new pact. She will become one of the Saxon knights. Hearing this, father nodded in satisfaction. Meanwhile, I was cheering on the inside. Having the last bloodline of the Holy Sword swear allegiance to me for that bastard, Brandon. It's an absolute gut punch. Meanwhile, over in Landenberg, the capital of Old Teutonia, Brandon was throwing an absolute fit over the Charlotte situation. He screamed at his men, "You bunch of useless idiots. You can't even catch one little girl. What the hell am I even paying you for?" A soldier, his voice trembling with fear, stammered, "My lord. The assassins we sent were killed halfway there. We suspect Charlotte fought them off herself. Pathetic trash." After barking his curse, Brandon turned toward the sword rack behind him. He gently stroked the longsword that gave off a faint, chilling glow. His eyes were filled with a bizarre, obsessive lust as if he were looking at a lover. Ah, aren't these moments just beautiful? Don't you agree? My holy sword, Durandal, my precious fiancé, just wait for me a little bit longer. He actually dragged his tongue across the blade. No matter the cost, I will find the perfect heir for you. He then barked orders at his men. Contact the Thieves Guild, send them to the Saxon territory. Give them whatever the hell they ask for. Just drag that wretched brat Charlotte back to me. It had been exactly 1 week since Charlotte swore her allegiance. Right after she got used to life in the ducal estate, she dove straight into strict maid training. And of course, our daily sparring matches had quickly become a core part of her routine. Uncle Helmut always personally oversaw our sword training, watching us clash so fiercely. You'd think, is this really just a fight between kids? Sure, our technique couldn't compare to the Black Knights just yet. But the sheer killing intent and speed were staggering. Right then, I suddenly whipped my shadow cloak around, quietly hiding my blade underneath it, hoping to catch her off guard with a sneak attack. But I didn't expect Charlotte's reaction to be that insanely fast. She immediately spotted the opening in my stance, and thrust her sword straight at me, just as the tip of her blade was about to pierce the cloak. Uncle Helmut suddenly stepped in, firmly gripping both of our blades. He chuckled, first praising Charlotte's sharp reflexes, before his tone shifted. "Lady Charlotte, do you know what the true essence of wielding a short sword is? It's all about explosive, forceful thrusts, isn't it?" She blurted out. "Quite the opposite." Uncle shook his head. "The true essence lies in your footwork. Just now, when Dale dodged your attack, he was actually closing the distance between you. In a moment like that, you need to immediately pull back and wait for your next opening. Also, your arm swings way too wide when you strike. The more your blade wavers, the harder it is to hit your target accurately. You're going to need to build your foundation from scratch." Charlotte frowned, looking completely confused. Her uncle continued to explain. "I've been watching you for days now. Your posture and footwork aren't just immature. They're completely unrefined," she shouted back defiantly. Her face flushed bright red. "Well, that's because I've never had a decent teacher." Uncle Helmut suddenly chuckled. "Well, now you do. Starting today, I'm going to fix that awkward stance of yours." The more Charlotte thought about it, the angrier she got. I quickly gave her a tug. Her uncle was already laughing so hard he couldn't stand straight. "I'm just messing with you. You just looked so cute when you got all riled up." Saying that, he gently patted Charlotte's head. Helmut is one of the continent's 7 great swordmasters. With his hands-on teaching, Charlotte's growth is definitely going to skyrocket. If I don't work twice as hard, she's going to catch up to me in no time. I didn't dare slack off on my magic training, either. Teacher Sophia once said that the process of constructing a magic ring is extremely long. You first have to feel the mana flowing through your body, guide it into a stable path, and then engrave the magic pattern into your very being. This process takes a normal mage at least 10 years. But thanks to my intense training, I managed to finish it in just 1 short month. When Teacher Sophia found out, her eyes went as wide as saucers. "You've already finished constructing your second magic ring?" I nodded, because in this world, a mage's magic ring is measured by its revolutions per minute. A first-tier mage usually only hits 300 revolutions per minute. My first ring is already at 2000 revolutions per minute, and my new, second ring is sitting at 400. Keep in mind, the bare minimum requirement for a new ring is 300. Since I had reached the second stage, I immediately decided to run an experiment and modify my existing ice ball magic. First, I strengthened the bonds between the ice molecules to make it heavier and much harder. Then, I mimicked the structure of a large caliber gun barrel to enhance its spin and speed, ultimately creating the ice bullet, blunt armor-piercing round. Afterward, I fired this ice bullet straight at a large tree. The tree instantly exploded, leaving a massive hole. It actually blasted right through the trunk. Teacher Sophia was absolutely dumbfounded. What just happened? I was secretly amazed myself. So it's actually this easy to make an armor-piercing round? I can't believe this extra magic ring packs so much punch. Teacher Sophia clapped, praising my rapid progress. Deep down, she couldn't help but reflect. From rescuing the knights from the orc tribe, to protecting Charlotte, this little guy always knows how to use his strengths for the right reasons. Sometimes it's a bit scary, but more than anything, he just makes you trust him. I am so proud of you, she said, suddenly pulling me into a tight hug. This unexpected embrace made me a huge, macho guy in my past life instantly freeze up. She's way too comfortable with physical contact. Isn't she being a bit too casual? That afternoon, I was still dwelling on it out in the Duke's courtyard. Does she really just see me as a kid? Whatever, practicing my magic is more important right now. Awaken. I raised my hand and forged a massive wall of ice. I tweaked my formula and whipped out my newly modified buckshot. This was a new type of ammo designed after 12-gauge double-aught buckshot. The bullets flew toward the ice wall at breakneck speed, ricocheting back and forth against the surface. Maybe next time I can change this step into a linear barricade. So you've been practicing here this whole time? Charlotte's voice suddenly called out. She said she'd been practicing the footwork Helmet taught her, then lowered her head, blushing. About what happened earlier, I'm really sorry. You were indeed being rude. I intentionally kept a straight face, but I gave a slight smile. I forgive you. After that, we just started chatting casually. My parents happened to see us from the window. They sighed. Time really flies, doesn't it? Our boy has already reached that age. My father chimed in with a warm smile. Don't they look absolutely adorable together? My mother decided right then to keep a close eye on us. We just need to guide him to follow his heart, they agreed. As for our incredibly kind, gentle mother, every week, she'd head down to the slums to hand out food and help people find work. The commoners were so deeply grateful to her. Starting this year, Charlotte and I began tagging along to help out. But today, a little kid suddenly grabbed Charlotte's hand. Please, save me, he cried. Before she could even answer, he dragged her into a dark alley. This was way too suspicious. By now, we had completely lost the royal guard, wandering deeper into the maze of narrow, twisting alleyways. What was even weirder, the kid didn't go to an adult for help. He specifically targeted a little girl like Charlotte. Just then, I glanced up and caught sight of a figure in black standing on the roof. That guy, he's from the Thieves Guild. Brandon must have sent him. My heart sank. I knew it, their actual target was Charlotte. But isn't this set up a little too obvious? Wait right here, I'm gonna go get my mother. I stalled, looking for an opening to escape. But the moment I turned into the next alley, a gang of thugs blocked my path. This has nothing to do with you, kid. The thug glared at me viciously. Hand over the little lady, and nobody gets hurt. Charlotte immediately shoved me behind her back. Dale, you need to run. The thug let out a cruel, mocking laugh. Scram now, or we'll tear you to pieces. I stepped right back in front of Charlotte. If you want her, you're gonna have to go through me. The thug smirked. Look at the little noble playing knight in shining armor. How touching. Too bad you don't know your place. Before he even finished, the thugs drew their weapons and swarmed us. Charlotte was trembling. Dale, I left my sword behind. I told her not to worry, because this was the absolute perfect excuse to test out the Shadow Cloak's new tech in the name of self-defense. Just as the thugs lunged at us, I triggered the cloak. A wave of pitch-black darkness instantly swallowed them whole. Blinded by the shadows, they panicked and started hacking wildly at each other. Blood-curdling screams echoed through the alley. This shadow stealth was a brand new skill I unlocked after breaking through to the second tier. By planting a parasite-like shadow generator inside them, it forces the targets to slaughter each other. Right then, my undead summon materialized. It rasped in an eerie, hollow voice. I'm so hungry. Suddenly, the leader of the thugs broke through the darkness and lunged straight at me. I don't care if you're a Saxon. You die right here. He arrogantly thought that in these cramped alleys, nobody could block his soul-infused assassination strike. But the moment his blade neared my face, a blast of dark energy repelled it. I instantly summoned my weapon, the double-barreled shotgun, Izzy's custom mod. Bam! I shot his accomplice right behind him. My undead instantly pounced on the guy, and brutally devoured his soul. The remaining thugs turned completely pale with terror. Honestly, even I didn't expect the gun to take him out in one shot. Then, the undead groaned again, so hungry, and proceeded to slaughter the rest of the gang. Once the bloodbath was over, I walked back over to Charlotte in the corner. Just then, the very last thug looked at the mangled corpses scattered everywhere and turned to run for his life. Little did he know, I already had my eye on him. I flicked my wrist, and an ice bullet shot out, smashing right into his ankle. He crashed hard into the dirt. I walked over, planning to interrogate him, but honestly I just lost interest. Might as well just put him out of his misery. I turned to look at Charlotte. This is the true face of the Saxon family, and this is exactly why people fear us. But this is also a power that can protect you, I told her. Seeing all this up close, are you scared? She just nodded, but then her expression shifted. You were fighting just to protect me, weren't you? One day I swear I'll use my own strength to repay you. I'm going to train so much harder. Honestly, ever since I took Charlotte in, that heavy burden I'd been carrying deep in my heart finally started to lift. I finally stopped feeling so agonizingly guilty over Sir Batter's death. I reached my hand out to her, and she took it without a single second of hesitation. Charlotte's feelings for me, well, they seemed to be growing a bit deeper than I ever expected. Meanwhile, Earl Brandon was absolutely losing his mind, screaming at a box on his desk. You see, after I told my father about the ambush, Father literally packed his men's severed heads into that very box and shipped it to him, right along with a little note. Lord Brandon, I would like to cordially invite your excellency to the Saxon Duchy. Given the sincerity of our gesture, I beg of you not to refuse. He knew exactly what this was. It was the Black Duke's absolute ultimatum, demanding he answer for what he did. He knew walking in there was basically suicide, but facing the crushing pressure of the Empire's highest-ranking noble? Even the world's greatest holy swordsman had no other choice. Sure enough, just a few days later, Brandon arrived. Father stepped forward with a chilling smile. I never expected you to arrive quite so quickly. Please forgive our lacking hospitality. Brandon obviously caught the dripping sarcasm, but he just gritted his teeth and replied, I'm not sure why your grace summoned me so urgently. There was a rather disturbing kidnapping attempt at the Duke's estate recently. The entire Empire is deeply concerned. Father's tone suddenly shifted, dropping to a dead, freezing cold. The strike in broad daylight, they certainly had some nerve, didn't they? But Brandon just flat out denied it, playing completely dumb. I assume you called me here regarding this incident? But, as His Majesty's most loyal guard, how could I possibly commit such a shameful act? Hearing that, Father instantly erupted in blinding rage. Pitch black magic violently exploded from him, instantly suffocating the entire room in thick, dark smoke. A massive, howling gale ripped through the hall. And then something truly horrifying happened. The flesh of Brandon's own men literally started melting off their bones. They were screaming, save me, please. But in just 2.5 seconds, they were entirely reduced to ash. Only Brandon was left, standing there, pale as a ghost and trembling in absolute terror. Father locked his vicious, murderous gaze dead onto him. Kneel. Holy swordsman Brandon, are you really going to keep playing this little game? Brandon was furious and humiliated, but the sheer, crushing pressure had him shaking violently. Finally, thump. His knees hit the floor. He completely bowed that so-called noble head of his. Father delivered his final, deadly warning. If you ever dare lay a finger on anyone from the Saxon family again, I will slaughter the entire Brandon bloodline. But then, he suddenly softened his voice, almost mocking him. You must be so exhausted from your long journey. Why don't you stay the night and get some proper rest? Thank you, your grace, but I have urgent matters at home. I must take my leave. After all, staying even one more second in that room was a death sentence. And just like that, carrying nothing but bitter resentment and humiliation, Brandon scrambled away. I watched him run, lost in my own thoughts. He's the Emperor's most fiercely loyal lapdog. He's going to be the exact spark that ignites this entire empire. And a single spark is all it takes to start a raging wildfire. When that happens, I'll be able to completely annihilate his organization. Once the news spreads that the great holy swordsman groveled on his knees before the Black Duke, the very core of the empire is going to shatter. Later, Father called for my teacher, Sophia. He pulled back a white sheet, and underneath lay the mangled corpses of the assassins who had attacked me. Every single one of them was ripped entirely to shreds. It was incredibly, brutally violent. All of this was done by Dale himself. Teacher Sophia stared in absolute, horrifying disbelief. She actually started questioning if she had taught me wrong all along. Father spoke up, his voice sounding almost like a desperate plea. Dale's talent is entirely unmatched. He desperately needs your wisdom to guide him, so he doesn't lose his way. I would like to ask you to serve as the family advisor for the House of Saxon. After a moment of silence, Sophia nodded solemnly. For now, her most important task was to truly understand this child's inner world. In the blink of an eye, it was my 10th birthday. The celebration this time was far grander than last year's. Even envoys from the Emperor's court had arrived. Wow, as expected of the House of Saxon. This is absolutely spectacular. The gasps of admiration from the nobles echoed one after another. But I knew the truth. These people from the Emperor's faction weren't here to celebrate my birthday at all. They were here to deliver a warning. The royal family would never tolerate anyone insulting the holy swordsman Brandon. And the envoy chosen to deliver this message was Rode, the man standing right in front of me. He was the master of the Red Tower. They were obsessed with fire, madness, and power. They were also infamous for their fanatic devotion to the god of justice from the imperial era. They would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. In my past life, I had suffered under the hands of the Red Tower mages, enduring all kinds of agonizing biological experiments. The House of Saxon truly breeds exceptional talent. Rhodes suddenly spoke up, his tone dripping with exaggerated praise. I hear your talent in magic is absolutely unmatched. There are even rumors that you single-handedly wiped out 1,000 orcs at just 9 years old. Truly fitting for the son of the Black Duke. I gave him a cold, polite response. I hope you enjoy your evening, sir. I just wanted to get this hypocritical birthday party over with. Honestly, I'd rather be out training with Charlotte. Just as I was thinking that, a sudden, piercing scream echoed through the halls. I dashed toward the sound. There, I saw a fat, grotesque man pinning Eve to the ground. He had a knife clutched in his hand. It was Lord Pietro, a noble from the Emperor's faction. Pietro had a filthy, sickening grin on his face as he pressed the blade against Eve's neck. Everyone's too busy celebrating for the little young master. No one's going to care about us. What the hell are you doing? I roared, charging straight at him. But Pietro wasn't intimidated in the slightest. He even turned his head to mock me. Well, little master. You're so tiny, I bet you've never been with a woman before, have you? Let me give you a good lesson today. With that, he tightened his chokehold around Eve. I was shaking with sheer rage. In an instant, a magic circle materialized at my fingertips. I will wipe you off the face of this earth, right now. But Pietro just kept running his arrogant mouth. In this hierarchy, nobody is going to blame me. They'll just say this little maid seduced me. Hearing that made my blood boil. I instantly fired a bullet of solid ice right at him. It ripped straight through his ear. Pietro shrieked in absolute agony. I glared at him with dead eyes. Kneel before me. The sheer crushing weight of my aura left him frozen in place. Seeing him hesitate, I screamed. I said kneel. Apologize to Miss Eve, now. Pietro was terrified, but his stubborn pride wouldn't let him back down. I represent His Majesty. By defying me over some lowly maid, you are insulting the Emperor himself. I immediately shot back. Oh, so you're telling me His Majesty enjoys watching nobles abuse innocent servants for fun? The massive commotion had drawn my father and the other guests to the scene. Taking in the scene, my father barked a harsh reprimand. Dale, what on earth is going on here? I turned to my father and declared that this man had attempted to assault a maid of the House of Saxon. Then, I raised my voice to the crowd. Distinguished guests from the imperial capital. All of you carry the duty of acting as representatives of His Majesty. Yet this man, Lord Pietro, not only tried to ruin the dignity of our maid, but he has severely tarnished the reputation of the Emperor himself. I absolutely refuse to stand by and tolerate such a disgraceful act. Rode, who had been quietly watching the drama unfold, suddenly started clapping. Well said, brilliantly said. With that, Lord Rode raised his hand, summoning a sphere of blazing fire as his eyes locked menacingly onto Pietro. You think a filthy parasite like you is fit to represent the royal family? Pietro was scared out of his mind. He spun around and tried to make a run for it. Claude gave a soft chuckle, and a burst of roaring flames instantly lunged at Pietro, swallowing him whole in a sea of fire in an instant. Once the flames died down, Claude turned to look at me. You don't have to say a word, he said. Eliminating anyone who dares to insult the Empire and the Imperial family is my duty, after all. Young Master Dale, I wish you a brilliant future. With the Emperor's faction finally gone, peace returned to the Saxon estate once more. Early the next morning, a maid quietly woke me up. She hesitated for a moment before shyly thanking me for stepping in to save her yesterday. Her timid, heartfelt gratitude really warmed my heart. Back in my past life, when I was reduced to a mere hound, I had never felt such genuine human warmth. But this peacefulness didn't last very long. My father quickly summoned me to his study. His expression was heavy, his brows tightly furrowed. Dale, what you did to Pietro was way too reckless. I didn't say anything back. Instead, I felt like the perfect moment had finally arrived. It was time to say what I had been holding deep inside. Father, did you know? If that hero from another world actually survived his battle against the Holy Sword Baldur, then his very next target would be our Saxon duchy. Hearing this, my father's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. How could you say something so utterly treasonous? Where is your proof? The Empire abandoned that hero. They were terrified that this highly decorated hound would eventually bite back. Even though the hero defeated the Demon King, the Empire never even bothered to cleanse the dark aura from his lands. Instead, they gifted that monster-infested wasteland to you. They are forcing our family to be their sacrificial lambs. As long as those monsters remain roaming on that land, our entire military force will be completely tied down. And that is the absolute best proof that the Imperial family is deeply paranoid about the Saxon house. I lowered my head after saying that. The truth was back in my past life. I had personally overheard the Imperial family plotting to frame the Saxons. But I couldn't just tell him that directly. So, I had to choose a much more cautious approach. Seeing my father fall into absolute silence, I quickly pressed on. Right now, the people within the Empire and along the northern borders are all calling us the Clan of Darkness. Just like how they tossed aside the hero. One day, they will wipe us out too, treating us as an internal threat. My father immediately pushed back. How could you possibly know that they abandoned the hero? I had to scramble for an excuse. I just pieced it all together from the history books. The Imperial family claims that the hero died taking Baldur down with him. But the truth of that day is a massive stain on the Empire. One they will never, ever make public. If my theory is right, then this empire is nothing but a vicious oppressor, using brute force to plunder and crush the weak. My father stared right at me. His eyes were filled with pure shock but also a faint, almost unnoticeable glimmer of admiration. Then what exactly do you propose we do next? I didn't hesitate for a single second. The Saxon family can never coexist with this empire. We have to tear the empire down. My father's face instantly went dark. Are you suggesting we raise an army right this second? I quickly waved my hands to explain. No, not right now. I'm talking about 10 years from now. Right now, rebel factions across the continents are all fighting for their independence. And lords just like you are terrified that the empire will point its blade at them next. The imperial economy is collapsing, bandits are running totally rampant. Sooner or later, the whole situation is going to completely spiral out of control. Over the next 10 years, we need to quietly build up our power. We must fund the resistance groups, unite all the wavering nobles, and win over the wealthy merchants in the cities. That way, we can slowly choke out the empire's economic lifeline. I laid out every single detail of my master plan. We just kept talking and talking right until the sun finally set. When I finally asked him what he thought about it, he suddenly burst into a booming laugh. Dale, you've seen a future that even I was blind to. His eyes were practically glowing with absolute ecstasy. From this day forward, you are no longer just the Duke's eldest son. And you are certainly no longer just a 10-year-old boy. You are the heir to the House of Saxony. From now on, I will listen to you, and I will respect your input on family matters. I took a deep breath. I could truly feel the heavy weight and responsibility behind those words. In that very moment, I was standing on equal footing with my father. Father, you said you would respect my decisions. Then please allow me to enter the tower trial in the city of the undead. My father's face instantly darkened. He let out a heavy sigh. The tower trial? That is a life or death trial for mages. It's a brutal competition to prove your rank by fighting the floor guardians. You can only rank up by defeating the guardians of the upper floors. And the absolute strongest earns the title of Master of the Magic Tower. He was fiercely against it. It's far too dangerous. It could actually get you killed. You haven't even formed your third magic ring yet. It's way too early for you. Normal mages don't even dare to attempt the third ring until they are in their 30s. Usually, only graduates from the Magic Academy are even qualified to enter. I looked right back at my father, my eyes filled with absolute determination. This trial is crucial, not just for me, but for our entire family. If I can prove myself there, it won't just secure my position as your heir. It will earn us real, undeniable respect. Instead of relying on empty boasts and gossip. He fell silent for a long time, but finally, he agreed. A few days later, my father brought me to the City of Death. The elders of the Black Magic Tower were all waiting for us. The atmosphere was incredibly grim and suffocating. Even I started to wonder if I was pushing myself way too hard. All around us, the whispers of the crowd began to swell. Look, it's the Duke of Saxony and young Master Dale. Rumor has it he's a once-in-a-generation magical genius. Is that actually true? A blonde man sneered coldly. It was Villic, the top graduate of the academy. That little brat looks like he'd start crying after a single punch. And he thinks he can win the trial? Just then, a sharp-looking woman with short hair stepped forward to greet us. This was Eris, a tower elder and the chief administrative secretary. After a quick exchange of pleasantries, she led me straight into the tower. 59 academy graduates were already waiting inside. Every single one of them will be taking the test alongside you. As the massive doors creaked open, Eris stepped up to the podium to announce the rules. The first floor is a life point battle royale. Please check the life necklaces around your necks. Every necklace holds exactly 1 life point. By commanding your undead minions to land a valid strike on your opponents, you will shatter their necklace and eliminate them from the trial. Any challenger who accumulates a total score of +3 life points will advance to the next floor. Also, the use of items is strictly forbidden. It was glaringly obvious this was a ruthless and fast way to weed out the rookies. A tall challenger next to me pointed at me with pure disgust. Look at this little freak. They say he's actually a third circle mage. What a total joke. Let's all team up and take him out first. They all glared at me with malicious grins. A few of them hesitated. Do we really have the right to gang up on a kid? But I just stood there, perfectly calm. No one needs to look down on anyone here. We are all competitors. My absolute confidence completely fueled their rage. The trial began. At Eris's command, all the challengers immediately started summoning their undead. But they only had one target in mind. Me. In an instant, a massive horde of undead soldiers charged right at me, raising their heavy blades. But I didn't panic at all. Because my undead soldier wasn't just physically massive. He literally sprouted razor-sharp bone claws right out of his palms. This was a secret technique taught to me by the strongest Dark Duke on the continent. The art of manipulating corpse bones to forge deadly weapons. My undead roared, unleashing a wave of bone-chilling, icy breath. His entire body was even encased in heavy armor forged from solid glacier ice. Just as the other undead tried to sneak up on me, he shielded me with his massive, towering body. Someone in the crowd gasped. That's water elemental magic. Don't tell me that kid is a dual element mage? The tall guy screamed in protest. How dare you use water magic to damage my undead? That's a blatant foul. I looked over at Aris. The rules never said I couldn't use powers other than dark magic to buff my undead. And since the trial hasn't been stopped, it means I didn't break any rules. Seeing Aris let the match continue, the other contestants were absolutely furious. Panicking, they started barking orders. Lock down his undead warriors. Let's attack together. We'll overwhelm him with sheer numbers. I glanced around. Well, since items were banned, the only way out of this was to rely on my own strength. I charged straight at one of the spirits, delivering a heavy blow and snatching the sword right out of its hand. That's right. My brilliant plan was to just steal the weapons from the undead soldiers. As everyone stared in absolute shock, I quickly coated the blade with my mana, reinforcing its durability. Then, wielding my undead blade, I crushed the enemies with overwhelming power. The other contestants' undead fell to my blade one after another. By combining swordsmanship with necromancy, I chipped away at their health points, until only one contestant was left standing in front of me. He immediately started begging for his life. Please, please, have mercy, young Master Dale. I honestly didn't get why he was so terrified. It's not like he'd actually die here. In a flash, I swung my blade right at him. Thwack! I left a giant lump on his head. I chuckled to myself because I hit him with the back of the blade. Young Master Dale, health points plus 59. Advancing alone. Aris's announcement left the entire arena in dead silence. But hey, this was just the beginning. Next up, I arrived at the second floor. Unlike the first floor, this level allowed any type of magic, but strictly banned all tools. The mission this time? Defeat the flesh golem. Standing over 10 meters tall, it was a grotesque monster made entirely of bulging flesh. It looked like it was going to burst at any second. Normally, the survivors from the first floor would team up to take down this behemoth, since it was supposed to be a co-op battle. But I had already wiped them all out. So now, it was just me facing the golem alone. The beast let out a deafening roar and slammed its massive fist down. The ground shook violently. Seeing its fist smash into the ground, it actually cracked a smug, victorious smile. It really thought I was dead. But what it didn't notice was that my magic was already clinging to its fist. I instantly activated my accelerated decay skill. The flesh golem's hand immediately began to rot, and a sickening stench filled the air. My father and Aris both stared with wide eyes. Aris couldn't help but gasp. The young master's magic is truly extraordinary. But the moment the words left her mouth, she frowned in total confusion. Why didn't the golem just cut off its rotting arm? Little did she know this was my ultimate monster killing technique from my past life. Biological warfare. In just 2.5 seconds, the massive flesh golem completely melted into a disgusting puddle of sludge. They probably had absolutely no idea that this bizarre, rotting mess in front of them was actually a biochemical attack disguised as dark magic. I pinched my nose and stepped back. Stench was absolutely suffocating. And just like that, I crushed every obstacle in my path, clearing the 10th floor and setting a brand new record for the tower trials. I even earned myself 4 days of downtime. Meanwhile, to help everyone recover from the trauma of that massive first-round slaughter, and to maintain fairness, Aris held a re-evaluation for the other 59 participants. Later that evening during my break, I was just zoning out by the fountain when my teacher, Sophia, walked over. You did wonderfully out there, young master. I gathered my courage and looked up at her. Teacher, would you want to go on a date with me? Hearing that, Sophia's face instantly turned bright red. I quickly added, there's a city festival tonight. We're just going to check out the fun. She nodded, but as she turned around, a faint smile crept onto her lips. A date? This kid probably doesn't even know what that word means. When we arrived at the city festival, the place was absolutely packed and buzzing with energy. We just strolled along together under the moonlight. The atmosphere was wonderfully relaxing. Sophia softly whispered, the moon is beautiful, isn't it? In the memories of my past life, that phrase was a hidden way of saying I love you. I was completely tongue-tied. I had no idea what to say next. The silence between us wasn't awkward at all. Instead, it felt incredibly tender. Maybe it was because she trusted me right from the start, making me want to draw even closer to her. Actually, a few days ago, while I was practicing magic on the balcony, I had already broken through to the 3rd magic ring. To push past my own limits, I pushed my wildly surging mana to its absolute peak and then slipped into a deep meditation. I reached the domain of comprehension within my inner world. There was nothing there, just absolute emptiness. And right there, in that vast, empty space, Master Sophia reached out her hand to me. She was like a single ray of light, illuminating the dark void of my heart. Noticing I was spacing out, she gently shook my shoulder. What is it? I just blurted out. Teacher, I like you. Sophia froze, staring at me blankly for a long moment. What did you just say? So, I said it again, even louder. I said I like you. Her eyes instantly lit up, and a soft, warm smile spread across her face. Dale, I like you very much too. Then, she pulled me into a tight hug. I just stood there, completely stunned. A few days later, it was time for the trial on the 11th floor of the tower. I'm still feeling incredibly frustrated because my relationship with Sophia hasn't progressed at all. She just treated my confession like the silly babble of a 10-year-old kid. I could only comfort myself, thinking, whatever, romance can wait. The most important thing right now is the tournament. The 11th floor was a one-on-one magic duel. This stage allowed the use of items, and permitted us to use our full power. The necklace of life could no longer guarantee total safety. My opponent was Albert Rosenheim, a third ring mage. He stood there with his arms crossed, looking ridiculously arrogant. Don't expect me to go easy on you just because you're a little kid, Master Dale. I'm just here to tell you. Your little winning streak ends today. Well, since there were no restrictions anymore, I had no reason to hold back either. I was going to show him the massive gap between us. Let the duel begin. The referee's voice had barely echoed out when Albert immediately launched his attack. A massive ball of black flames blasted straight toward me. He flashed a twisted, savage grin. You'd better stay on your toes, kid. Then, he instantly conjured countless arrows of darkness, raining them down on me like a brutal storm. I saw right through it. Launching an attack of that scale in such a split second? He must have been secretly chanting the spell before the duel even started. That was a blatant foul. But what really pissed me off was the referees. They clearly knew he was cheating, yet they did absolutely nothing. They just wanted to see what I was truly capable of, completely throwing the fairness of the match out the window. So this is their precious meritocracy? What an absolute joke. I cursed them in my head, but my feet never stopped moving for a second. I dodged his attacks with a few quick steps. Seeing his sneak attack fail, Albert began summoning his undead. Arise, my immortal legion. Swear your eternal obedience to me. You who were born from a darkness deeper than the night itself. I cringed so hard listening to him. Where the hell did he learn such a ridiculously edgy chant? His undead were definitely a lot tougher than my previous opponents, though. They charged at me, swinging their massive axes. I easily dodged them again. Albert let out an impatient roar. Is dodging all you can do? As he spoke, the horde of undead swarmed around me, trying to trap me in. I seized the moment and cast my magic. A blast of black wind sent them flying through the air, but Albert just smiled smugly. It's not over yet. The very next second, the undead minions suddenly started exploding all around me. In his mind, I was already dead meat. But what happened next shook him to his core. When the smoke finally cleared, he realized I had completely vanished. Yup, I had activated the invisibility skill of my shadow cloak. Albert panicked, frantically looking around. Where are you? Come out. I popped up right behind him. You're looking a little panicked there, buddy. Before he could even react, my shadow coiled tightly around his legs. The shadow asked excitedly, can I eat him? Can I? I told the shadow not to eat too much. It immediately opened its massive, terrifying jaws and swallowed Albert whole. My shadow was surprisingly obedient, actually. It only ate his insides, leaving his body intact. So things wouldn't look too gory. The surrounding challengers were completely pale with terror. After the referee announced my victory, I looked around at the crowd. Anyone else want to challenge me? They all looked absolutely terrified. Nobody dared to step forward. Some even surrendered right on the spot, crying out, I just want to live. The rest of the matches were a total breeze. My opponents either forfeited or were easily beaten. That is, until the 20th floor. I finally ran into a real threat, a headless horseman. This was a guardian personally created by the elder of the Nortaro City Tower. Its power was way beyond anything I had faced before. Even a risk couldn't help but warn me. Young master, this might be the absolute limit of what you can handle. I just laughed to myself. If everything went exactly as expected, wouldn't that be way too boring? I raised my hand and unleashed my shadow magic. A thick cloud of black mist instantly swallowed the arena. The audience was totally confused, wondering what the hell was going on. But when the mist cleared, an even stranger sight appeared. The headless horseman was actually down on one knee, bowing to me in absolute submission. I just gave it a single command. Kill yourself. And without a second thought, it destroyed itself. Even I was pretty shocked by that insane level of loyalty. To think a created being would betray its own master just for me. Despite that, though, I ended up doing something that confused absolutely everyone. Without even looking back, I turned straight around and headed for the exit. Because deep down, I knew anything past this floor was an unknown territory that even the monsters were afraid of. I couldn't push my luck any further. The trial ended here. I had already proven myself. As I walked out of the tower, the crowd at the Noir Tower stood in perfect formation, looking just like a grand military parade. The nobles, the elders, and every single one of the challengers. They all bowed in deep respect to us, father and son. Little did anyone know, from this very moment onward, the northern factions were quietly joining forces, and the House of Saxony was destined to be the banner that led them. The Duchy of Saxony's reputation soared across the north right after I conquered the tower's trials. A heavy burden of command was placed on my shoulders. Father decided I should personally lead the campaign to wipe out the orc tribes. For a 10-year-old child, this was an unimaginably massive responsibility. Yet, across the entire duchy, not a single soul questioned my fitness to command. After all, the boy who fought 1 against 100 and shattered records in the tower had already crushed any doubts with sheer strength. For Prince Dale, for the House of Saxony, my black cavalry charged straight into the orc ranks. They were never meant to be shielded behind me. They were the sharp swords wielded by my command. It was, without a doubt, another flawless victory. And so, as the rightful heir to the House of Saxony, I steadily began to unify the north. I calmly delivered my report. Father, we have eliminated 1,500 orcs. And what of our cavalry's casualties? Only 3 men sustained minor injuries. Aside from that, our ranks are completely intact. Father then asked if I had used magic to shield them. I shook my head, clarifying that all the credit belonged entirely to the swordsmen of Saxony. His eyes swelled with pride. Uncle Helmut took it even further, believing that I was more than ready to command an even larger cavalry force. After all, leading an army of 1,000 men was a completely different beast than my previous missions. Naturally, I took the opportunity to attribute all of my success straight to the brilliant teachings of Sir Helmut. Hearing this, my uncle couldn't stop grinning from ear to ear. After that, I returned to my usual training routine. Lately, I could clearly feel that Charlotte's swordsmanship was improving at an astonishing pace. Her strikes were light, fluid, and incredibly fast. She even caught me off guard a few times. To reach such a level at just 10 years old, she was already remarkably gifted. One day, Uncle Helmut and I were going over battle tactics. In combat, when cavalry units are deployed on one or both flanks, the key is for the cavalry to smash through the enemy's flanks and surround them. Uncle moved a piece representing our black cavalry. Then, our infantry steps in to halt the enemy cavalry's advance. This is the hammer and anvil strategy. It's called that because it's just like placing a block of hot iron on an anvil and smashing it with a hammer. This tactic, however, relies heavily on the sheer strength of the cavalry forces. And it's precisely because we have the black cavalry that pulling off such a move is even possible. Later, my uncle and I shifted our discussion to Charlotte's swordsmanship. She had already built a solid foundation for her technique. We planned to teach her the House of Saxony's aura cultivation methods and sword arts. If she could learn to properly channel the power of aura through her mind, her strength would easily multiply dozens of times over. But Helmut let out a heavy sigh. There's just one thing that troubles me, he said. I had already seen this coming. It was the fact that Charlotte's combat style fundamentally clashed with ours. Just as mages from different magic towers have entirely different approaches, knights forge their mana into auras through their own unique cultivation techniques. And naturally, different styles of knighthood produce completely different auras. Helmut's entire philosophy was built around a rigid, heavy blade, a style relying entirely on brute strength. It was the same principle that made the North's black cavalry as devastating as charging war chariots. It was a pure display of how northern knights relied on overwhelming power to tear through the battlefield. But the blade Charlotte pursued was a swift one. Her focus was purely on speed, not raw power. This fundamental clash in styles, it could easily become a massive stumbling block for her future. His tone was laced with genuine regret. Given Charlotte's incredible talent, she might be able to scrape into the lowest ranks of the 7 swordsmen. But she could never become the first sword. That was the absolute pinnacle of glory among the 7 holy knights, the very throne her father once held. Uncle Helmut would often sigh, lamenting that her father's Sword of Flowers was truly the most powerful sword technique on the entire continent. Yet now, it had completely vanished from the world following his death. It was a tragic loss. Even while juggling all these incredibly tricky matters, I still made sure to keep up with my studies. Thanks to this, my reputation across the land kept steadily rising right up until an urgent dispatch shattered the peace. Baron Greenbelt, a vassal of the Saxony family, looked utterly helpless as he pleaded with my father for aid. Pukel has provoked a territorial dispute at the border. He claims that the copper mine under your name belongs to him. If I refuse to hand over the mine, he'll officially declare war. After a heavy pause, he delivered even worse news. Count Brandon has taken Duke Pukel's side, and they sent a letter stating, if we don't hand over a percentage of the copper mine's shares, the Knights of St. Magdalena will intervene. The Knights of St. Magdalena, the absolute strongest order in the Empire, made up entirely of war heroes. I sneered inwardly. Suddenly, it all made perfect sense. So this was Brandon's revenge. He still hadn't forgotten being forced to his knees and publicly humiliated by my father that day. Ever since then, he'd been desperate to wipe away the shame. But since he couldn't openly declare war, he goaded Pukel into causing trouble at the border, even trying to use the mine's profits to buy the military backing of the Knights of St. Magdalena. Brandon, if you want to play games, I'll play along to the bitter end. I turned to my father. Please, let me lead the Saxony Knights into battle. My father flatly refused. You're too young to shoulder this burden. Slaughtering men on a battlefield is entirely different from hunting monsters. This is no child's play. He then turned to Baron Greenbelt, promising him that he had no need to worry about the mine, and that he would handle it himself. I lowered my head. I was more than capable of handling this, but my father simply didn't trust me. Uncle Helmet noticed my disappointment, and quietly pulled me aside. Don't take it to heart, young master. Look, I've got something fun for you. How about we learn a strategy game together? It's a war simulation. It's a bit like chess. The rules are complex, but it perfectly mimics actual combat. Once you master the rules, it'll do you a world of good. Let's play a few rounds and chat about battlefield tactics. My eyes instantly lit up. Without a single word, I grabbed the board and sprinted straight for my father's study, leaving a bewildered Helmet behind. I slammed the board down on the desk. Father, if I can beat you in this game, then please, allow me to command this territorial war. My gaze was unwavering. War isn't just a clash of brute strength, it's a fierce battle of wits and spirit. Please, judge my worth through this game. Uncle Helmet, seeing the dark look on my father's face, rushed forward to smooth things over. My deepest apologies, Your Grace. I'll talk some sense into him. But just as my uncle was about to drag me away, my father suddenly spoke up. If you win, I'll grant your request. But if you lose, you will banish the thought of leading an army from your mind forever. I nodded, and the moment the game began, immediately seized the upper hand, brilliantly using the terrain and flawlessly deploying my troops. Uncle Helmet watched, his eyes wide with shock, because a 10-year-old boy had just beaten the legendary Black Duke in 2 out of 3 games. I looked my father dead in the eye. A deal is a deal. Now, please let me lead our forces. My father sat in silence for a moment before asking, when did you learn to play this? I found the rulebook in the library a few years ago and taught myself. I lied smoothly. Well, I couldn't exactly tell him it was hard-earned battlefield experience from my past life, could I? My father finally caved. A promise is a promise. In my name, I grant you absolute command over all knights in this campaign. Uncle Helmet frantically begged him to reconsider. My father just looked at me. This concerns the very honor of the Saxony family. Failure is not an option. So I will ask you one final time. Are you really going to take on the entire burden of this battle all by yourself? I replied with absolute certainty. Please, trust me, I will return with victory. Shortly after, inside Marburg, the stronghold of Brandenburg, fury threatened to tear the roof off Count Brandenburg's study. The Count was pointing a trembling finger right at his son Philip's nose. He roared at the top of his lungs. You went drinking in the slums again, didn't you? Philip opened his mouth to argue, but was instantly cut off by his father's even harsher interrogation. Look at the situation we are in. Word has it that Dale of the Saxony family is personally leading their knights into battle. And look at you, still fooling around. What the hell are you thinking? Philip waved his hand dismissively. That Dale is nothing but a 10-year-old brat. What could he possibly do? Father, as your eldest son, I beg you to let me lead our troops. I promise you, I'll beat that arrogant little brat to a pulp. Little brat? Count Brandenburg slammed his fist viciously onto the desk, trembling with rage. You actually think he's just a brat? He glared at his son's arrogant, clueless face. His fury boiled over. Who do you think you are? Even if I gave you 100 years, you still wouldn't be a match for him. Philip trembled violently under the verbal assault. Cold sweat poured down his face. Right at that moment. For this battle I will hand over the command to you. You will lead our knights into battle. Philip's face instantly lit up with joy. He thought his father had finally recognized his worth, but the Count's very next words splashed over him like a bucket of ice water. What are you looking so smug about? Your only job is to stand at the front of the formation and put on a show. Actual command goes to Sir Milvus. He will take full charge of the operation. He then ordered Sir Milvus to take Philip away, telling him to learn how to be a proper, obedient figurehead. Count Brandenburg paced back and forth in frustration, his mind a tangled mess of resentment. Damn it, is sending a 10-year-old boy to the battlefield just another one of the Black Duke's twisted schemes? A few days later, I arrived at the territory of Baron Greenbelt. He looked completely fraught with worry, forcing a painfully stiff smile on his face. We humbly welcome young Master Dale of the Saxony family. However, the guards behind him weren't nearly as polite. Whispers rippled through their ranks. He's literally just a kid. I bet he can't even swing a sword. But everyone says he's some kind of magic prodigy. Maybe we shouldn't worry too much. The Baron had clearly heard the murmurs as well. He hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Young master, having you here puts our minds completely at ease. We can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Quickly now, we've prepared a banquet inside for you. Please, take some time to rest. That won't be necessary, I cut him off sharply. My tone was absolute. We are short on time. We have no time to waste on banquets. The Baron froze in his tracks, completely bewildered. He probably never expected a 10-year-old kid to dismiss him so coldly. Before he could even process it,